Thank you. Thank you. It needs people of experience to guide you into the red one. I'm talking about Professor Tricky. Okay, you can see this in the abstract that the contents are available everywhere in cognitive linguistics books and introductions. But in my own way, I try to put these things together in my own way to influence your understanding of cognitive linguistics. And there is nothing innocent about organizing things I did the way I did in this presentation. I will go over the abstract, and I'm not going to spend any time reading it to you. Those who are interested could have a full soft copy of the whole thing. And if you want to make comments, my email and my is there, and you can send me any comments. Right. I will start obviously with what is cognitive linguistics for those who do not know what it is. And I should think that not so many do not know what cognitive linguistics is. Commitments of cognitive scientists, what are cognitive abilities, what are the properties of cognition, the meaning in cognitive linguistics, conceptualizing and categorizing capacities, embodiment, and mirror neurons. I'll finish with mirror neurons. There are lots of other things that are being done in cognitive linguistics. Okay, so cognitive linguistics is a study of cognition. That's why it's talked about as cognitive. It's the study of cognition. Okay, what is cognition? Well, where is cognition? Nobody knows where it is. In the spine, in the head, and nobody knows where cognition is, right? But the inspirations of cognitive linguistics come from cognitive science, okay? Sometimes also called cognitive sciences. Well, this combination includes six disciplines, as you can see them: linguistics, psychology, neuroscience, artificial intelligence, anthropology, and philosophy. Now, if you do any two or three of these, you are actually in cognitive science. Now, one of my last students, doctoral students that defended her thesis last year in the Bourguiba Institute, the day of her defense, when I said this, she said, "Sir, I did not know that I was doing cognitive science." Yeah, she was doing cognitive science. As long as you take any of these disciplines together, you are in cognitive science. You are a cognitive linguist if you are doing linguistics. If your major is psychology, you are a cognitive psychologist, etc. Okay. If you are doing cognitive linguistics, you believe that cognition, first of all, is embodied. So embodiment is a major issue in cognitive science and cognitive linguistics, and it is socially and culturally embodied. So you have this mixture of social things, cultural things, and embodiment, where the body gets into culture and culture gets into the body. It's more or less like the Worfian thing, where language gets into thought and thought gets into language, and which one gets into what, etc., etc. Again, the issue is open here to analysis, to study and discussion. And it's also situated. Now, when you study cognition, cognition is situated, that is, it's situated in a context of use. There are 5 main, if you like, subdisciplines of cognitive linguistics. The one major discipline is frame semantics, introduced by Fillmore right in the 70s. Cognitive grammar by Lanaka. Conceptual metaphor theory, of course, Lakoff and Johnson and many other followers. I am in this area of cognitive metaphor theory. Mental spaces, Fauconnier and Turner, and construction grammar by Goldberg. So all these are varieties of cognitive linguistics. Oh my God, I thought sorry, I have to switch it off. Sorry. Cognitive linguistics, as I said, derives its theoretical insights from the findings of cognitive science. And cognitive science is concerned with regularities across individual minds, structures, and processes of mind, and constraints So cognitive science is concerned with regularities across individual minds, structures and processes of mind, and constraints on the mental construction of meaning. So you see, more or less like formal linguistics, where Chomsky was looking for regularities in all languages. Cognitive science was looking for that, for regularities, but within the mind of people, not within language with capital L. Now, the literature on cognitive linguistics is getting thicker and thicker every day with the publication of Introduction to Cognitive Linguistics, applications of the cognitive paradigm, specific publications on cognitive metaphor, and here I feature with lots of other colleagues, where if you see Maalej and You, that's a publication, that's an edited collection of books where we looked at the parts of the body. And I think I brought a copy to the department here for you to consult if you want. Okay. So I edited that book with Ning Yu, a Chinese friend of mine, and we addressed internal body parts. Okay. No, external body parts. And there's another publication by my late colleague and friend, Farzad Sharifian, who addressed internal body parts. So these are major books in the application of the cognitive paradigm. And obviously, cognitive linguistics nowadays has a journal by the same name. And I think I also brought a few copies of cognitive linguistics that I have, that I'm not reading anymore. So I thought that some of you might be interested in looking at some of them. Right. This is an interesting thing. When I teach cognitive linguistics, I usually take this quote from Lanaka, where he, and of course, I highlighted things in red, being about formal linguistics, and things in green as being cognitive linguistics. And so this actually sums up the differences between formal linguistics and cognitive linguistics. The difference is also of linguistics, right? For those who are doing in linguistics, is dealt with in terms of linguistic level, phonology.
We can't hear you.
In the schemas, at the time when meaning is generally pursued with apparatus derived from formal logic. So all of us know that formal linguistics deals with language as a form of logic. Okay. It claims the inseparability of syntax and semantics. That's what I was telling you about. It claims the inseparability of syntax and semantics, because where syntax stops, semantics begins. That's why he believes that syntax is an common system. Is accepted by most theorists as established fact. It seeks an integrated account of the various facets of linguistic structure. Now, that's what I talked about. All the facets of linguistic structure are integrated. At a time when received wisdom calls for specialized theories dealing with numerous separate domains. Now, this is the departmentalization of formal linguistics. You have different departments within linguistics. And by the way, many of them are closing, even in the United States now. With cognitive linguistic departments in colleges, even colleges are opening. Finally, at the time when formalization and rigorous documentation are increasingly regarded as the sine qua non of physical linguistic inquiry, it suggests that these concerns must cede priority to a far more basic need. What is this need? It's the conceptual clarification of fundamental issues. So the notion of concepts, the conceptual structure of language and thought is paramount in cognitive linguistics. And you could see this as a fundamental tenet of metaphor theory, where any metaphor can only be understood according to this paradigm in terms of a linguistic structure and a conceptual structure. It's a pairing of, and the two are actually coordinated through a mapping. Okay. So I don't think I need to add more to the difference between cognitive linguistics and structure arises from. Now, this is what all cognitive scientists, basically the second generation cognitive scientists, because the first generation cognitive scientists did not hold especially imagery, metaphor, and conceptual structure in high esteem. They thought, like Chomsky, that things are more formal and that are more logic than imagery. So conceptual structure, the conceptual structure that we use, okay, arises from our sensory motor experience. The sensory motor experience, that is where our senses dominate in the calculation of meaning. And the neural structures that give rise to it. Okay, there's here a relation between the conceptual structure and the neural structure. This is no secret that every word that I speak originates in a neuron that I have in here, and that I, through my memory, I call on to be able to externalize it and speak any language that I know. So I'm not getting into that. This is neurolinguistics. Mental structures are intrinsically meaningful by virtue of their connection to our bodies. Okay. So meaning is closely related to the body and our embodied experience. So our experience is embodied and meaning is related to our body. There is a basic level of concepts that arises in part from our motor schemas and our capacities for gestalt perception and image formation. Are you trying to magnify that?
Yes.
It's not very, yeah. I thought of dividing it into more pages, but then I failed to do so.
It's clear. I mean, no worries. It's clear, isn't
Well,
it?
it's very, it's a bit hard for them to read it from afar. The motor schemas are very important for meaning, because if you look at many uses of language, you realize that they are determined in partly by image schemas, right? Well, let me just give you a couple of examples from Arabic, and then I'll move on to what is next. Now, when you say, for example, right? That's an up and down image schema. Okay, right. Now, where do we get this up and down? Now, according to cognitive science, we get it from the body, from the erect position of the body. We have a position here which is erect, and the body is an up and down thing, right? And the schemas get their meaning from the body. So language is closely related to image schemas and to the body. Our brains are structured so as to project activation patterns from sensory motor areas to higher cortical areas. These constitute what we have called primary metaphors. Now, sensory motor things have to do with all the senses that we have, and there are lots of things that depend on the senses for their understanding, especially metaphors. And in understanding, the structure of concepts includes prototypes of various sorts, typical cases, ideal cases, social stereotypes, salient examples, cognitive reference points, and points of graded scales, nightmare cases, and so on. Okay. Now, for example, is the Pope a bachelor? That's a case of what we call here an ideal case of a bachelor. He's not a bachelor. Okay, a bachelor is a bachelor. Okay, but the Pope, by being someone who doesn't marry, cannot be called a bachelor. Why? Can you tell me why? I'm not teaching you anything. Can you tell me why we cannot consider the Pope as a bachelor? Come on. Well, because a bachelor is supposed to marry after that. But is the Pope supposed to marry? No, he's not. That's why it's not here. It's not a typical case. The Pope is not a typical case of a bachelor. It's a special case.
It doesn't fit into the classification.
It doesn't fit under the category of bachelor. So categorizing the Pope as a bachelor doesn't work. Okay. So he should have a specific. Many people call that it's a nightmare category. It's a really nightmare category. Reason is imaginative. In that, bodily inference forms are mapped onto abstract modes of inference by metaphor. Now, Lakoff and Johnson define metaphor as imaginative rationality. It's imaginative rationality. There is imagination in metaphor, but there is also rationality where what is mapped and what is not mapped into a metaphor. Sorry.
Sorry to interrupt, but we had some.
Did I do it?
No, it's okay. No, it's okay. It's just that our participants online could not hear you very well.
Well, maybe because I'm not always so close to the mic.
No, maybe it's a problem of data input. Sorry for this interruption. Okay, I will. Okay, I will stop my sharing here. I stopped sharing.
Okay, doesn't seem to respond. Yeah. Okay. The last point here has to do with conceptual structures that are pluralistic, not monolithic. Typically, these two conceptualizations, well, it simply means that metaphor allows you, depending on context, depending on where you are, what you are talking about, it allows you this possibility of conceptualizing your experience in many different ways. And those ways are very often inconsistent with each other in reality. But this is the way things go. cognitive wage. This is almost the same. So I'll go over that. Okay, cognitive abilities. Right. I'd like to just go over these because they are important. Now, we can compare and contrast experiences. That's one cognitive ability. If you can do that, this is a cognitive ability. And this is not anything to brag about. All of us can compare, all of us can contrast things. And that's basically human cognitive ability. Now, why am I insisting on this? Well, I am insisting on this because in the time of Plato and Aristotle, and the view of metaphor that we inherited from them, metaphor is considered something like an exploit. Not everybody is capable of using metaphor. Only poets can use metaphor. Only people in literature can use metaphor. And I did my PhD, it's called the array at the time. I did it on that particular point. I did it to show that literature is not the one place, it's not the only place where metaphor is to be found. And I did it on politics and economics. I realized that when I defended that, Lakoff and Johnson in 1991 talked about the importance of the importance of metaphor in the war in Kuwait. They explained how the war started in politics, and it started actually by talking about Kuwait as a virgin that is going to be violated by Iraq. So politics is a very, very important place where metaphor can be found and manipulated. Economics is a different area of things, and I made that clear when I don't remember anything that I did in my PhD. We can use one experience to categorize another. That's another cognitive ability, which is metaphor. Okay, so all of us are capable of using metaphor, whether they are good or bad, of bad taste or good taste. All of us have this capacity, cognitive capacity to do it. We have a capacity for abstraction or schematization. Now, abstraction and schematization has to do with, as I referred to that earlier on, many of our uses of language depend on the schematization of experience using language, using image schemas. Things like in and out, things like up and down, far, near, etc., etc. Now, all these things are actually abstract things around which uses of language are built. We can focus our attention and structure scenes in terms of figure, ground, organization. Now, this is also a cognitive ability. Now, this mic is on the desk, but nobody would venture and say the desk is under the microphone. Do you see my point? Why? Well, because it's like that. It's like that in the sense that we take big things to be grounds for small things. Okay? Now, if we had something like a refill for your telephone, if you put it under the microphone here, therefore you can say the refill is under the microphone. But you wouldn't say the table is under the microphone. Now, this is our capacity as humans to organize the world we live in terms of figure and ground. Now, the definition, I'm not going to give it anyway here, but one of the criteria of figure ground organization of knowledge is that figure is almost always smaller than the ground, because the ground supports the figure, and not vice versa. But of course, in real life situations, one ground could be a figure and one figure could be a ground, as I tried to show you here. Okay, this is when you say the microphone is on the desk, the microphone is the figure. But if I put anything under the microphone will be the ground, not the figure. We are capable of mentally scanning a path through a complex structure. Okay. Now, if you go to any place where there is a mountain, for example, any place where there is a mountain, you could look at the path and say, oh, look, the path is going down. Is the path going down? The path is not going down. But you are scanning the path in such a way that you see it as going. Okay? The path is going down, or the path is going up. That's scanning, and that we have this capacity to do things. We can draw on image schemas to structure our mental world. And I showed this many times. What is cognition? Cognition, by which we understand and function in the world, is said to be embodied. Cultural, situated, social, and distributed. Now, this is a concept that has entered the scene very recently in these 15, 20 years, the notion of cognition being distributed. Now, what does that mean? Well, it simply means that cognition, that is, what we know and the way we know what we do, is not found in all people in the same way. If you look at all the people together, you would find the real cognition of people. And that's called the social and the cultural cognition. But I'm sure that there are things that we know, we share, but there are people here that know a few things that other people do not know. In terms of pronunciation, in terms of lexical items. Now, this week I was asking my wife about where has the word cyclament gone? Have you ever heard of the word cyclament? How many of you know that? Okay, how many of you do not know that? That's what I mean by distributed. That's what I mean by distributed. Okay. Many people know, but also many people don't know. Okay, and the only perfect state of cognition is the social and cultural one, which is ideal, by the way. I mean, it's ideal. You won't be able to see with your naked eyes cognition in the wild like that. No, it's not possible to see it. You can only construct it from pieces in individuals. Okay. Now, this reminds me of Saussure, if you remember your linguistics, Saussure, where he talks about language in this way. Language is only perfect in society, not in the individual. So you might say that this is a Saussurian kind of thing. Yes, it is. In Lanaka, he talks a lot about de Saussure, and he talks a lot about Alexander Halliday, that is the father of systemic linguistics nowadays. There's a lot of systemic linguistics in cognitive science and cognitive linguistics. Any question? Okay. Okay, these are arguments that conceptualizing capacity. We have cognitive abilities. But we also, what do we do with this cognitive ability? We have a conceptualizing capacity, and we have a categorizing capacity. We have the capacity to categorize things, to categorize people. And I'm sure these days of turmoil in politics, you can witness a lot of categories emerging. The vermins, you have vermins category, people that are vermins. You have categories that are microbes. We have categories that are citizens. You have categories that, now this is a categorization and refreshing the mind of people about different things in society. Concepts are the elementary units of reason and linguistic meaning. A concept in cognitive linguistics is a unit of reason and linguistic meaning. Okay, so in linguistics, very often we say it's the lexical item. You see, the lexical item is the unit of linguistics. If you put three lexical items together, you get to a syntax. If you put these things together in a context, you get semantics. If you enhance it with another kind of context, you get into pragmatics. Now, in cognitive science, concepts, we have concepts. And concepts include all these things. Our conceptualizing capacity is the ability to form symbolic structures that correlate with preconceptual structures of our everyday experience. Again, so the symbolic structures are the image schema here. Okay? And these are called preconceptual because they are inherited by concepts. They come even before we can speak a language. Yes, even before we can speak a language. There's a lot of experimentation on children about concepts and about preconceptual things. Okay? And even before they can speak, they have those concepts. The ability to project metaphorically from structures in the physical domain to structures in abstract domains. Yeah, this is the mapping that I talked about earlier on in metaphor, where you have a concrete domain being mapped onto an abstract domain. So you take, for example, I don't know, you take anger. You take anger, for example, as an abstract domain, and you map blood as when you say dam tla rasi مثلا. Okay? When you say that, you're actually mapping something concrete onto something abstract to get the metaphor. To get the metaphor through, it's a schematized kind of metaphor. It's built on an up and down dimension. And the ability to form complex concepts and general categories using a schema and structuring device. There are complex concepts that are not like, for example, a microphone, or there are complex ones, and those complex ones can be decomposed through new schemas. There's a lot of research on that. Categorizing capacity, the classical theory of categorization has been challenged seriously with every branch of cognitive science, within philosophy, psychology, anthropology, artificial intelligence, and even within linguistics. Now, what is this challenge? Well, the challenge is that very often people thought that there is a word for this, and there is a direct mapping of the word on this to get this. That is to get the word, to get the meaning. And of course, you must be familiar with this. We talked about that. I talked about to my students a long time ago. Right. Now, the idea is that this has been challenged. This has been challenged. The relation is not just as direct as that. There are lots of things that get into the naming and into the meaning of those things. It is at the basic level of knowledge that knowledge is organized. Now, there's a distinction between basic and non-basic or superordinate. So, for example, if we talk about table and chairs, these are basic categories. Now, when we talk about furniture, we're not talking about basic, because furniture doesn't have a physical existence. It's an abstract. Furniture is abstract. And so our knowledge is actually organized in terms of basic, not in terms of, and it's the role of the basic to lead us to the abstract very often. That's what we do very often. Mental images arise. I mean, if I say furniture to you, there is no image that is going to arise in your head about furniture. Well, maybe you get a representation of 2 or 3, 4 different things. But if I say chair, without realizing it, you will have a mental representation of chair, and you can define it. You can define a chair. It has a seat, it has a back, it has legs, it might have arms or whatever. And it could be made of plastic, it could painted, it could be not painted, stainless steel, as it is the case here. Now, if you take furniture and want to do the same for furniture, you won't be able to do that. You need basic level categories of furniture to be able to do what you did with chair. Okay? Now, furniture is more or less an encompassing, superordinate category. Right. Metaphor is used to conceptualize experience. Image schematic structures are found. And the idea is that metaphor works by basic level categories, not abstract. Earlier on, I said, okay, there's a pairing in metaphor between the linguistic level and the conceptual level. Now, the conceptual level is, so to speak, the one we talk about here as metaphor is used to conceptualize experience. It's the mental level. It's the mental abstract level. The body interacts with the world. Okay, of course. Now, when you sit on a chair, your body interacts with, and by the way, if you look at the chair, you would find that the chair is embodied. The chair itself is embodied. It's made to embrace the shape of your body. I mean, just imagine a chair with spikes instead of you wouldn't be able to know. Well, okay. Now, things are made in such a way that things are embodied, and not just words, not just language, not just concepts. Now, things in the world are embodied, basically. Okay? Of course, you would say, well, there are things that are not embodied. Yes, of course. There are things that are disembodied. Yes. There are things that are disembodied. Okay? But mostly, wherever you go, you will find examples of embodiment. Okay? Now, why is it made like this? Why does it fold like this? Not the other way around. Because it's made to open for you when you open it, not open it for somebody else on the other side. Well, the folding of a laptop is embodied. It's embodied. Okay? The touch is everything. Shape, we talked about it. The shape of the chair is very important. Now, categorization is automatic and unconscious. We do not spend a lot of cognitive energy to categorize things and people, and if somebody gets into the class with a beard like this, I'm sure many people would categorize him as you know.
There are two types.
Whatever. Okay. So, and that's unconscious. I mean, we don't really spend a lot of time doing that. Of Of course, there are problematic cases where we need to think about, where they're not part of our cognitive unconscious. Okay? There's something called the cognitive unconscious, and Clifford and Johnson talk about it as just the tip of the iceberg. But the rest we don't know anything about. Categorization is basic to thought, perception, action, and speech. Now, please do not think there's a lot of literature on animals in cognitive science. So please do not think that what I'm talking about here is just for humans. Now, animals categorize, of course. I mean, if you take your sheep to graze, you would notice that your sheep will not eat anything. Your sheep will be choosing. Why is that? Well, because your sheep is categorizing the grass he likes and eats it, and would shun any grass that he doesn't like, and would not eat it. So categorization is basic to thought, perception, action, and speech. You see, speech is the last one, because when we begin, we begin without speech. The pre-verbal stage is very important in our life, and we learn a lot from our actions and from our bodies. And just to take babies, They take a pillow, hug it like this, and or put it in between their legs, and think that this is a horse. They do it. There's a lot of research, by the way, on this. Okay. Thank you. It's not my. Categorization enables us to function in the physical world and in our social and intellectual lives. Categorization only gives the impression that our categories fit the objects in the world. Now, earlier on, I talked about this misfit between the words that designate objects in the world. It's not the case that there's a direct fit. Sometimes you won't find a word for a category. You cannot categorize something, or you won't find the word for a category. Especially if the category is an unknown one to you, or if the concept is an emerging one. You will find it very difficult to map it onto an object in the world very often. Categorization is essentially a matter of both human experience and imagination. You see, there's a lot of imagination in categorization. Now, I remember, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be offensive or anything, but I just remember now something. I took my son 30 years ago to the doctor after his circumcision. And the doctor took the stitches just like that. And he said to me, I was with him, not his mother. He said, and he was about 2 years old. Now, this is what we mean by imagination, categorization and imagination. Okay, I'll go over the functions of categorization, the dynamicity of categorization. Otherwise, I would spend 2 hours doing these things. The cognitive unconscious is the massive portion of the iceberg that lies below the surface, below the visible tip, that is consciousness. It consists of all the mental operation that structure make possible all conscious experience, including the understanding and use of language. And that's why we talk about language as an unconscious phenomenon. When you use language, you don't spend a lot of cognitive energy to speak a language. Of course, I'm not talking about when you learn a language afresh. No, I'm not talking about that. It takes a lot of energy at that time. But once you pick up the language, language becomes automatic. Now, so the notion of automaticity now in cognitive science has come back from the notion of repetition, the notion of entrenchment, the notion of all these notions have come back into cognitive science, and that's why I traced the origins of cognitive sciences, formal linguistics, and functional linguistics as taken from each other. The cognitive unconscious makes use of and guides the perceptual and motor aspects of our bodies, especially those that enter into basic level and spatial relation concepts. It includes all our conscious and unconscious knowledge and thought processes. Okay, now in cognitive linguistics, language is a cognitive phenomenon. Okay, I'll go to embodiment. Now, this is a distinction made by Lakoff and Johnson, 3 levels of embodiment. They talk about the neural level of neurochemistry and cellular physiology, which is the physical interface of concepts and cognitive operations. See, the complexity of our body, including the neurochemistry in relation to concepts, is fundamental in cognitive linguistics. This is one level. Then you have the phenomenological level. Now, the phenomenological level is the conscious part of our thought. That is, it's the level where things exist in the world for you. Okay. And the cognitive unconscious level, which include all aspects of linguistic processing, okay. The phonological, phonetics, morphology, syntax, semantics, pragmatics, and discourse, and all these are unconscious. So the only level that seems to be more conscious in embodiment here is the middle level, which is the phenomenological level. It's just partly conscious, not totally. Okay. Now the body and the mind, obviously, Johnson wrote a book called The Body and the Mind. Yes. And to mean that the mind, or cognition, because sometimes they're used interchangeably, is embodied. There's a lot of body things in our mind. Our mind actually is inhabited by our body. You see, as small as that, if I take the mind as here in my brains, it means that because the brains is physical, if you like, it's made of neurons and all that. It's physical. Because it is physical, the body tends to inhabit it. The embodiment thesis is motivated by pre-linguistic image schematic structures arising from personal and socio-cultural embodied experiences, held to have a figurative character as structures of embodied imagination. Now, image schemas occupy a very important place in cognitive science, and in embodiment in particular. A schema is a recurrent pattern, shape, regularity in or of these ongoing ordering activities. Now, if you look at this definition, simply if you can take in and out, or if you can take any other image schema, you'll understand what we mean by it's a recurrent shape. Okay, being shapeless itself, but it's a shape. And regularity it's a regularity in our uses of language, and in our behavior, everyday behavior. An image schema is a neural structure residing in the sensory motor system that allows us to make sense of what we experience. Okay, these are the common image schemas: the container, the source, the path, the link, the scale. These are the most recurrent ones. Okay? Again, I will go over culturally situated, meaning in cognitive linguistics, semantics. This is according to the various theories that I talked about. When you get to the, you may have a look at that. Otherwise, I'll spend a lot of time dealing with that. Okay, I will end nearly an hour now. Sorry for. Okay, it's going to be 2 minutes. Neuroscience. What are mirror neurons? Well, mirror neurons first described in the rostral part of monkey ventral premotor cortex. Discharge both when the animal performs a goal-directed hand action and when it observes another individual performing the same or a similar action. Now these people, this is very recent, that is beginning of 2004. Okay, the first time they noticed that monkeys are capable of doing that. That is, the cortical system in a monkey would function in the same way or when they did that with humans, your regions of the brain that are responsible for something, for imagining something. You can imagine something, or you can talk about it. Okay? The region of the brain responsible for imagining something, doing something, interpreting something are the same. The same mirror neurons fire when you perform something. Suppose you go and take this projector. You go and take this projector. Now the cortical brain responsible for that will fire. Okay. When you imagine in your head that you are taking it, the same cortical structures function in the same way. When you imagine, when you remember, when you do these things. And I think this has huge implications and repercussions for education. If people take this to the end, right, when you do the right gestures in the class, your students will be doing the same. When you pronounce the same way, in two different pronunciations. Your student will be confused, unconsciously confused. And we talk of unlearning, not learning, unlearning. Your student will be looking somewhere else for knowledge. I have nothing written there for what I said, but you can think of the huge implications of mirror neurons. You may read about it. I have a list of references indicating these things. Thank you so much. I have no conclusion, of course. Cognitive linguistics is there, and it doesn't need any conclusion. Thank you for being patient and for listening to me for about 1 hour. I can imagine myself being tired with this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so
Now
much.
the floor is open to
I-
now first of all, let's give her the
would you
floor.
leave them, would you leave for them? If there are any questions.
Of course, yes, sure. We do have time, so
Yeah, please.
any questions, any comments? Yes, Monique?
May I sit down?
Of course, sure. Please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Maalej. It's always a pleasure. It has always been a pleasure listening to you. To corroborate what you have very cogently said, I'm going to give you some data from the Quran, because the Quran talks about making the whole book simple or accessible to us human beings. And this process of simplification, of making simple, making accessible, is done through embodiment. For example, if you look at Surah Now, this has led to a theological problem. It has led to a serious theological. I mean, you were in Saudi Arabia. It has led to a serious
Is it metaphor?
theological
Is
problem.
it metaphor or not?
Because of this dimension, some people are so steeped in their literalist, I wouldn't say even literal, literalist, understanding of the Quran. To the point that they attribute physical entity to God, God having one hand or two hands. Although I came across verses in the Quran that talk about God having hands in the plural. But now, بأيدينا, أيدي والسماء بنيناها بأيد. Where actually God
Aiden means plural.
Hands in the plural.
It could be plural.
Eschatology, the science of the invisible, the science of the unknown, and so on. Eschatology is based on embodiment, describing hell and fire, and heaven and the path, sirat, and all the elements of chastisement on the one hand or reward on the other. All of these things are embodied.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Okay, Iman, just a second. Can we take a question here from Dr. Faisal Maalej joining us online, and then I'll get back to you. See Faisal, the floor is yours. أهلا مرحبا صباح الخير.
Good morning, everybody. So it gives me a pleasure to join you. I'd like to thank Professor Maalej for this illuminating conference. It's not easy actually to cover all the ramifications of cognitive linguistics except by an expert. I have two questions. The first one is, you mentioned that there are almost 6 intersecting disciplines like cognitive linguistics, cognitive science, neuroscience, neurolinguistics, and anthropological linguistics. So do you intend to, for example, remap cognitive linguistics even visually, just like the research map in translation studies by Holmes? Do you think this is useful to trace the boundaries between the cross-disciplinary limits of these 6 interfacing disciplines? Number 2 is, do you think that these fragmented, I'm not belittling the findings in cognitive linguistics, but these fragmented findings about tense system, prepositions, idioms, voice, body parts, embedding in language, embodiment in language, etc. Do you think that these fragmented findings could one day compete with established models of language like GGG or functional systemic linguistics to compete in order to construct a fully fledged cognitive linguistic model with a complete gestalt, as you said, and could provide some language learning theories, translation models, cognitive poetics, etc. So, or should we wait for the let's call them allied sciences, allied disciplines? Should we wait for these allied disciplines to mature and provide exact scientific data to have a full picture of the scene of the whole cognitive linguistic landscape? So sorry for this question, it's very long. I hope you can see my point. So there are many fragmented findings. So can they one day or in the near future, join forces to provide a fully fledged theory to account for language? Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Maalej.
A complex way of asking the question, but I could not possibly give a direct answer. I did not talk about fragmentation in cognitive linguistics. I did talk about that in relation to formal linguistics.
It's my view of it. It's my view of it. Yeah.
Sorry?
So I've noticed that the findings are fragmented because there is an accumulation of findings in cognitive linguistics here and there about different areas. But can they one day aspire to a fully fledged theory accounting for different phenomena in language?
Well, I think you're aware that there is something nowadays called cognitive poetics, which is the application of cognitive linguistic studies to the study of literature. And I think, in fact, even before you came here, I did teach a course on that, I think. Cognitive poetics. I did teach. Were you one of my students? Yeah. And I did teach a course on metaphor, I think, also. Yeah. Now, in translation studies, there are many applications now of cognitive linguistic findings. I myself contributed, I think, a paper in 2008 on how we do translation with cognitive linguistics. And it's published in a journal called, I don't remember the journal, but it's in, I remember that I have published that. A unified framework for everything. I said that cognitive linguistics has taken a lot from basically from functional linguistics, with which it has affinities, because both of them are functional, by the way. But you're talking about applications. I did not experiment with applications. I did experiment with applications to various issues that I myself was interested in, basically the emotions, body parts, and I was interested in these things. And I applied the theory, and I contributed a view of embodiment, which is now nearly acknowledged and recognized as a sub-theory, if you like, of embodiment that I found in many of the studies that I did on Tunisian Arabic. I found data. Hey, تتفكر عملنا paper on ضرب. Well, I spent now something like 35 years of my life working on Tunisian Arabic. I never worked on anything in English. I wrote in English, but I never thought of writing anything in English. On English, but it's English. And now I'm currently working on blood in Tunisian Arabic and Tunisian Arabic dialect. I published on the hand, the head, the heart, lots of different things on the emotions. But I don't think that it's fragmented. I mean, I think that it's a homogeneous theory. Within cognitive linguistics, embodiment nowadays is a full-fledged theory. It's a theory within cognitive linguistics. And why? Well, because it's a very important element in meaning and in thought. That's why people are talking about it and writing about it.
Thank you. Thank you very
If
much.
I may, and if you don't mind, because I have a follow-up comment. Usually I disagree with Faisal, but today I cannot agree more about. It's not. It's not a question of fragmentation, but what Faisal is raising is the idea that cognitive linguistics has remained at the applicability level rather than the theoretical level. By full-fledged theory, cognitive linguistics offers many explanations to many items and to many phenomena, but it does not provide a holistic account as other theories of linguistics do. If you come to formal theory or systemic functional theory or CDA theory, they have offered a whole account of everything. Now, we can consider, and there is now a current debate about the independence of cognitive linguistics, independence of systemic functional linguistics. Of course, they do have many affinities, but now we find that cognitive linguists trying to get their independence from this functional framework or this functional paradigm. And there is a whole debate on that, and I totally agree with Faisal that of course, it offers, and you said it yourself when you said that it offers some, not to phonology, not to syntax, but to semantics. Now, can we speak about the theory of linguistics which does not deal with the phonological system, which is one component of language? You see what I mean?
Well,
I think this is what Faisal has tried to raise. It is applicable, it works, and it's good, but I think it cannot get its independence as a linguistic theory, and that's the debate nowadays. If it cannot offer an account of phonology, an account of morphology, because that's, even if we remain at the functional level, language is still about form. Okay. Now, what functionalists are trying to do now, in order not to be criticized by formalists, is to try to start from meaning, but reach form. Okay, account for phonology, account for sound system, and this is what they are working on. Theories which have developed theoretical constructs are trying to expand into other fields. And this is, I think, what cognitive linguistics is finding difficulty in doing, because it has remained at the cognitive level, which does not really explain the system or the form. So to what extent can we think that cognitive linguistics can claim to be a linguistic theory? You see, and I think I'm sorry for this. I'm sorry for raising this, but I'm just raising issues which are raised by pure linguists. And I think it's understandable because it has remained at the boundary between cognition and language. And this is what makes it, not failing, but not succeeding enough to provide a whole account of language.
Cognitive linguistics has, as I mentioned, it's 6 ramifications. And those ramifications, all of them have independent theories. Now, if you look at, for example, the metaphor theory that I know more about, there's a theory. There's a theory that has been constantly being updated, changed, improved. And that theory has been applied I mean, I myself spent 25, 30 years of my life applying that theory to my dialect of my Tunisian Arabic dialect. Cognitive grammar also is a huge theory of grammar. I mean, look at how Lanaka teaches us, how he shows us how to teach prepositions. Have a look at that. Have a look at that. These boxes and everything. I mean, I mean, I have a dictionary actually. I have a dictionary here in my, which is based on cognitive linguistics. It's a dictionary. It's a dictionary of grammar. It gives you all the tenses and everything in cognitive linguistics. It's a very pedagogical way of doing things. And I don't think, I mean, look at mental spaces. Look at how many huge publications and theories there are on mental spaces. Integration, they talk about integration. They talk about lots of different things. I mean, I'm not really in the theory to mention details about it, but I disagree that there are no theories. There are theories. There are theories. Cognitive linguistics is a theory. Of course, as I said, it builds on other theories because it cannot build otherwise. It has taken from the Saussure, it has taken from functional grammar. Which theory hasn't taken from any other theory? Chomsky has taken from other theories, from Indians and from Israelis, from Arabs. He has taken from all these people. And the theory, I think, those who want to read about the theory of cognitive linguistics, they can read about it. Please.
Yes, I mean, it's a different perspective. I mean, yeah, thank you.
If you think that cognitive linguistics has no theory, what did I apply? What did I spend my life doing?
Yes. Okay, a question by Iman and then Delia. Iman, please.
In the heart. Which theory is that? Which theory is that? Psychology. No, I understand you, but if you could please provide me with the publication, this publication in psychology on the perception lies in the heart, I would be very grateful to see it, to read it and see, to know about this.
Our perception of things that we think our minds. So it's interesting. How can you see this?
I don't know about it. I cannot answer you. I mean, I don't know anything about this. I'm asking you to provide me with the reference.
If you can
if
provide,
there is any, I would be very happy to know it, to learn about it.
Okay.
I worked on the heart, and I'm working right now on colors and perception, and I have another theory to say, and nothing to do with the heart.
I would love to see that publication on the heart. I may add small point.
Yes,
Please,
and,
please.
Oh, sorry.
yes, please go ahead, Anis, and then we'll give the floor to Delia. Yes,
Maybe it's more about epigenetics, the whole influence of the atmosphere that you live in, the function, and you have to embodiment this in the whole experience. It's more about epigenetics. Because it's all connected at the from epigenetic view, all influences the perception, how the cognitive moves from one point to another, either positively or negatively. So maybe that's the point.
Yeah, that actually conflicts with what I talked about as distributed cognition.
Yes.
Because when you say epigenetic, it means that it's in the genes of all of us, without exception. And cognitive linguistics doesn't say that.
Yeah, but epigenetically speaking, each individual has its epigenetic experience.
Yeah,
So,
definitely,
people have
definitely, definitely.
interactions.
Therefore, we cannot say that it is across the race,
Yes.
if you like.
Yes.
But in individuals, yes.
okay, question by Delia. Thank you, Anis.
Thank you very much for the presentation. There's a tendency in neurolinguistics to study how mental and neurological illnesses affect language abilities. So the question is, to what extent does studying metaphors understanding in these patients help unveil new perspectives on studying human cognitive ability?
You should look at the doctoral thesis of my last student in Bourguiba Institute, who did work on those deficiencies in metaphor and in naming, also naming things. And she worked on patients in Razi in Tunis. I was so much interested here to have access to patients at the hospital in Sfax in vain. They refused categorically to allow me to collect data. I wanted to collect data from metaphor, actually, and how metaphor is affected by the illnesses of these patients. Okay? Is that your question?
Yes.
Definitely. I mean, if you look, for example, at aphasia, people that have aphasia, right? Yeah, metaphor would automatically be destroyed. They will not be able to pair two things, especially autism. Yes, okay. A grammatic, nothing. They would not be able to understand and to make metaphor. Okay, I wanted to have a case study here in Tunisia, but they denied me the right to that. If you have somebody, unfortunately, if you have somebody you know, that's unfortunate. If you have somebody in one of the hospitals of Tunisia, and you want to do that research, I have experience on that. Okay? And I'll be happy to help.
Yeah.
If you can collect data, and if you're interested in that, nobody has ever published anything on that in Tunisia. Nobody. So it would be a breakthrough if you do that.
Yeah, Delia worked on her MA on
is that?
schizophrenia. Delia,
Schizophrenia, yes.
But
I
she
read a lot
wanted to
about
have access to Razi, but she couldn't. I think. Yeah, she wanted to have access.
My student could.
Because she knows somebody, I guess.
She knows somebody. That's why I told you that.
Yeah. Delia wanted to work on Razi patients, but she couldn't have access, so she had to collect.
I think we have our own hospital. Here.
Yeah.
Why Razi?
No, not for mental illnesses. Here we have.
We don't have mental illnesses here. We
do have the psychiatric. Three levels. Yes, 3 levels. But it's a problem of access. I think.
It was supervised by Professor Jarraya. I'll give you his name. He's retired now.
Yeah, now I guess by Professor Shanice Tricky.
Even if you have something, there are some paperwork that is
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
else the results would be,
There will be no results, nothing.
even if you know someone and they let you in,
You will have ethically, for ethical purposes.
No,
you
no,
can-
no, no, no. You
And
can,
it's-
no. There are lots of different ways of getting your data and not mentioning the names of these people.
Wait, yeah, just need
Keeping
to
you
sign the
anonymity. Nothing. I mean, my student did that
Mhm.
with fictitious names. She gave fictitious
Yeah,
names, and
yeah.
you can give numbers, and you can do your research. Okay. You're talking about cases. You study cases here. You're not talking about individuals, and you're not getting into their private life.
Yeah. So Delia, that's food for
Go
food for
ahead,
you.
go ahead if you want.
If you know somebody.
So,
Okay, so a
it's not
question
me
by
to give the
Kate.
floor.
Not just but just a comment. So when you were talking about the neurons, so it came to my mind learning theory called the social cognitive theory, which is a combination between
Yes.
say cognitive view of learning and also the social. So
Yeah.
what you said is purely, it has to do with that. It is
Yeah.
relevant to this theory,
Yeah.
but there is something which is missing, which is related to learning. Cognition is not enough in me, so purely cognitive, let's say, approach to learning is not enough. It should be combined with the social. Having the neurons, okay, so it's, I mean, it's there, like it's the brain or in the mind. So the teacher, for example, they say the learner can learn through that, through observing.
Yeah.
But however, observation is not enough. So it should be combined with that social, the model that should provide, for example, the teacher who gives us the demonstration. So we should have a good teacher with, let's say, good training in order to be able to provide that good model so that the neurons
Can have a place in learning.
yes. So it should be, there should be a combination between the social and the cognitive.
Yeah, well, cognition is in cognitive linguistics is social, cultural, distributed. So cognition is not just like that in the void. No, cognition is distributed, is situated, it is social, it is cultural. Obviously. Now, if you want to profit by mirror neurons and cognition, of course, you have the situatedness, the context, of course. You have the social side, you have the cultural side. So they work together. We're not saying that, okay, take mirror neurons and work with them. No. If you're doing cognitive psychology, for example, because that would be cognitive psychology, cognitive learning. There's a theory called cognitive learning, okay? Cognitive learning theory. When you apply these things, cognitive science.
Okay, one final question by Kamal. Kamal, could you get close to here, please, so that our online participants can hear you, please? Just stand here, please.
Okay, thank you, Professor. I have two quick questions. The first one is related to the area of convergence between SFL and the cognitive linguistics, which is
What is SFL?
systemic functional linguistics.
Oh, yeah.
So in the concept of construal, especially because
Construal.
it is a key concept. Could you
Yeah.
please clarify the concept of construal? Because you see that the starting point in cognitive linguistics is with Lanneker's belief that language is in the mind. Now, the colleague stated that language is thoughts are in the mind, but Lanneker starts with or believes in languages is in the mind against the beliefs of Halliday that language is social system. So there are many points of convergence, but this is one of them. Now, I'm interested in the area of adapting a cognitive linguistic approach to vocabulary, teaching vocabulary, and taking it from the side of the schema theory. You've stated image schemas. Are they just? I want to Are they part of it or?
No. The schema theory is a different theory.
But there
Applied
are
to
things
literature.
related to the strategies adapted in cognitive linguistics, such as concept mapping, etc., which is part of schema, the schema theory. So that's what I mean, actually.
It's not schema theory. No, schema theory is,
Thank you, Kevin.
is something that has been like a tool in the study of literature, where they talk about how the schema can serve as a way to understand even things that are not mentioned in the text. Okay, and this is also related to the theory of meaning that talks about meaning as constructed not in the text. It's constructed by the reader. That's what schema theory should be situated in. It should be situated there. So it's image schema is something which is pre-verbal and pre-linguistic, and it is in the body. It's available already in the body, and we use it in the construction of meaning, and we use it in conceptualization and in categorization also. Okay, what's your other question, please?
Construal.
Oh, the notion of construal. Okay. Lanaka has written a lot on construal, and many other people have written a lot of construal. Already, I have a chapter. I'm working on a book, and I have a chapter on construal. Well, very simply, construal means how you can construe something in many different ways, many different sites.
It's the same concept used also in functional linguistics.
Now, in functional linguistics, it's grammatical construal, how you can construe an experience into a clause. Yeah. I mean, maybe from a cognitive perspective, it's about conceptualization. In SFL, it's about grammaticalization, how you put it in the form of a clause, the experiential metafunction.
In cognitive linguistics, construal is fundamental because it has to do with the facility of talking about the same reality in different ways. Okay, and basically, it's not your grammaticalization at all. It's for example, let me just take a grammatical example of construal, the active and the passive. Okay. Now, in terms of construal, you've construed the same situation as active and passive. You want to focus on the event, or you want to focus on the actor. Okay, again, this is terminology.
Yeah, foregrounding and backgrounding.
So when I say the window has been opened, and he has opened the window, you're talking about two different meanings in cognitive linguistics.
Two different modes in SFL, in fact.
Two different meanings. Yeah. They don't mean the same thing at all. It's not a question of, notice that in formal linguistics, we talk about surface structure, deep structure, and the active is derived, so the passive is derived from the active. The situation is totally different in cognitive linguistics. You have a difference in figure ground organization, basically that. Okay, what in functional linguistics is talked about as the theme and the reme. Okay.
Or operative and receptive for the active and the passive. It's not about the focus, but rather about the mode. Operative mode versus receptive mode, the active and the passive.
Okay, some people talk about focusing on the event and focusing on the actor, which is exactly the same. I'm not familiar with this terminology. Maybe this is newly created terminology.
No, that's Halliday 94. Halliday 94.
94.
Yeah.
No, I did not read Halliday after 85. Because I stopped being Halliday. Very simple.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Maalej,
you.
for your
Thank you. Thank you so
interesting
much.
talk. Thank you
you
for
so
your
much.
patience in answering the questions of our researchers. Now it's time to give you this appreciation. We really appreciate you coming and your being among us today. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Nice.
Okay, now time for applause. We thank Professor Maalej. Okay, coffee break for 20 minutes, please, because we have to go back for the workshop.